Coming up on today's episode of the Moneypants Superpower Hour, we are going to reveal the biggest weakness of Moneypants. Yes, there is one major weakness. Moneypants is an incredible program. If you use Moneypants, your kids will be hardworking, smart, and talented. Oddly enough, however, this may or may not be a good thing. Today, we're going to discuss why that is and what to do about it. All this and more, but first, the joke of the day.
So a man dies and goes straight to hell. He meets Satan in a room with 3 doors. Satan says, well, I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is that you have to spend eternity behind one of these doors. But the good news is you can choose which one. So the man opens the first door and there's a sea of people being boiled for eternity in hot oil. Yikes, he thinks, and moves on to door number 2. There he sees thousands of people being tortured and poked by demons. Oh, that's even worse, he says, and moves on to door number 3. There, he sees crowds of people standing knee-deep in sewage drinking coffee. Well, says the guy, this doesn't look too bad. I choose door number 3, and he wades off into the sewage. Just then Satan yells, okay, everybody, coffee break is over. Back on your heads. Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Moneypants Superpower Hour. We are your hosts, Hannah and Fontaine Judd, and we're the proud parents of 8 sons and 7 daughters, ranging in age from newborn to college student. We're both BYU graduates and the creators of Moneypants. Head on over to CaptainMoneyPants.com to learn more about what we do and what we're all about. We believe every person on this planet has been given at least one superpower to help them accomplish their unique mission in life. But the only way to unlock those superpowers is through work ethic. That's when greatness happens, and that's where Moneypants comes in. Moneypants is the complete toolset for cultivating work ethic in all aspects of a person's life. Today's topic is a little unique. It's about the number one weakness of Moneypants. So Hannah, the whole point of Moneypants, as we say in our little intro, it's to help people develop their superpowers, to be smart and frugal and wise with their money, to be hardworking and to develop their talents.
Yeah, so it's the family members. You're like, wow, they're going to be successful. They're developing their superpowers. They're going to become superheroes.
But there's a problem.
Yeah, there's a big problem.
Actually, no. The big problem with Moneypants is it. And this is going to sound funny, but
it works really well.
It works really well. And you're probably thinking,
they will be hardworking. They will have talent.
They will have these amazing superpowers. And so you're like, well, how could that be a weakness? Well, because the exact same formula could create a supervillain. Whoopsies. So you could be training superheroes or you could be training supervillains. And that's one of the problems. Moneypants is so effective that your kids will, or anybody in the family, will develop all these amazing superpowers. But what if they...
And a great work ethic.
Yeah, but what if they decide to use those for evil? Like, that could be bad. That could be really bad. That's the big problem with Moneypants. It could happen
to you. It could happen to me.
So, because your family members... They're not
going to be fence sitters. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Are your family members going to use their newfound superpowers for good or evil? Are they going to be a superhero or a supervillain? And it's kind of, I don't know, Moneypants almost guarantees they're going to be one or the other.
Yeah.
So I think the easiest solution, this will be a short podcast because really, if that's the issue, you probably shouldn't use Moneypants. No, just kidding. So I think what we should talk about are kind of some examples of what we mean, where there's 3 stories. The first one is the end of the Roman Empire.
The Roman Republic. It was the end of the Roman Republic.
Okay. At the end of the Roman Republic, what's the difference?
For 800 years, they had this republic going.
I'm off on my history, I guess.
It was a country like ours.
Right.
They had representative...
I thought the Republic and the Empire ended at the same time.
No. Then they moved into having dictatorships.
And that's when the Empire was...
With Julius Caesar and all the Caesars.
Oh, okay.
Where they basically they had a country like America, like the United States of America, and that republic, you know how we say we pledge allegiance you
Yeah.
know,
To the
and a
flag of
lot
the
of the
United States of
symbols,
America.
a lot
Yeah.
of the symbols in our
And
government.
to the republic for which
Yeah,
it stands.
a lot of the symbols in our government are actually Roman symbols from the Roman Republic.
Okay.
Anyway, that republic came to an end. Power was grabbed by Julius Caesar.
Okay.
And he was the first dictator. But right before that happened, there was the Roman triumvirate.
See, that's what I remember from history.
Triumvirate?
Triumvirate. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically, three very politically powerful men shared the power in the government. They were the three top guys, but they were still vying for power
Okay.
and trying to be the top dog. Anyway, one of them was a guy named Marcus Licinius Crassus, and he was the wealthiest Roman that we have record of. He had accumulated more wealth than any Roman figure that we know of.
Wow.
And he was extremely wealthy. Well, he had a successful loaning business. So basically, he had a credit card company. And he also had a rent out a slave business.
Okay.
Where he would have well-trained slaves and he would rent them out to people. So credit card company, loan a slave business. And then, but the best was he had this thriving real estate business. And he owned all this real estate. And you're like, okay, well, that sounds great. Well, how he went about this real estate business was in Rome. Rome, the way it was built, it was very crowded, and the way the buildings were built, it was very prone to fires. And these fires were awful and very devastating. And Rome did not have an organized fire department, how we have fire departments. That, it's a community thing. So these devastating fires, Crassus would take advantage of this situation, and he'd see that somebody's house was burning down or their business, and he'd say, hey, your house is burning down. I'd love to buy it for a couple pennies. And they'd be, there was nothing they could do about it, and their property was about to be worthless. And so they would sell it to him for close to nothing. And then he'd go wave down, call in his 400 servants, put out the fire, minimal damage to the building, and then he would fix it, and now he was the new owner. And so that's what he did. He built up a great real estate business. I don't know if he started any of the fires, but even so, it was just kind of a schmucky way to go about.
So here he was.
Becoming wealthier and wealthier and wealthier.
But at what cost?
And he was a politician, so he wasn't like trying to solve it from that end politically either.
Right. Well, no, that's just it. Okay, so here he was, shrewd, great with money, a leader, persuasive, outgoing, great businessman, successful politician. And instead of using those to make the world a better place, he used it to take advantage of other people.
Yeah, using it to help people who were in a hard time. He was doing the opposite.
Instead of using his political influence and his social skills and his leadership to create a fire brigade that helped everybody, or to redo, the building code so there were fewer fires, or to somehow orchestrate to eliminate the fires in the city.
Or help the families that were victims of these fires.
And instead of doing those things, he used his money and power and influence to take advantage of people. That is what we call a supervillain.
Yeah. I wonder if that's where the word crass comes from this guy, Crassus.
I don't know. So that's first story. Second story, there was this great motivational speaker, and he was a leader and a strategist and an author.
Incredible leader.
Very motivated. You could not listen to him and not be inspired by this guy. He was a very, very organized, had very high standards, almost a perfectionist. Yeah, that guy's name was Adolf Hitler. He used his superpowers for bad. Did a lot of very, very bad things. Another supervillain. And then, this hasn't happened yet, but here's another example. The third story would be, we have one son of ours who is incredibly stealthy. This kid, look.
He's a talent.
He was 2? We were at a swim meet, and we took one of the kids to the bathroom in the locker room, and he came with. And we finished with one of the kids, as we were leaving.
He probably started walking backwards or something. I don't know. He had a tendency to do that.
He carefully hid himself in one of the lockers. And had my wife not seen out of the corner of her eye him do it, we would have never found him. That was it. It's the funniest. This is a 2-year-old. And he was so silent.
He couldn't even talk, really.
This is a superpower. Like stealth is a superpower. And he has it. Anyway, he could go one of two ways. He could head special forces and save lives, or he could become a crime boss and rob banks and steal treasure and do all sorts of horrible things. He could go either way. He could become a superhero, or he could become a supervillain. And that's just it.
And he has quite the brain for strategy.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Just incredible.
He's that kid.
Like uniquely talented in this area. So yeah, what he does with it.
Well, I think, Hannah, a lot of parents look at their children, and I think inherently parents look at their children and go, I see this potential. Mm-hmm. To some degree, and obviously some kids have more potential, or it's more obvious earlier or later or whatever, and it's in different categories. But every parent, I think, looks at their kid and goes, I could see you doing good with this. But that's just it. If you have this great capacity for good, the pendulum swings both ways. You also have the great capacity for bad, and Moneypants just enhances that capacity. And so instead of just, my kid's a hero or my kid's a villain, no, Moneypants helps your kids be superheroes or supervillains. And that's a problem. That's a major problem because we have, Hannah,
as parents, I think most of us, I'm sure there are exceptions, but most of us, we're only thinking about the great things our kids could do. And that's exciting. That's why we're like teaching them and training them, is we have this vision of
doing great good in the world.
Of their amazing potential.
Yes.
And that's so fun.
Nobody raises a kid going, I'm going to raise the next Adolf Hitler. I can't wait to raise the next.
Have you ever thought of that? Like you're holding your little baby, you're like,
little Adolf.
So sweet. What if it's Adolf Hitler? I don't know. Am I the only one who does that?
No. No. So, but you bring up a good point where I think our kids
like you wonder if his mom ever expected that. Were you expecting that?
Yeah. Mrs. Hitler. Did you expect your son to grow up to be who he was? Oh, I knew from when he was a little baby. He just had that mustache. No, I don't think so. I think most parents look at their kids and go, man, this kid's going places. It's going to be awesome. And then somewhere along the way, they get derailed or sidetracked or something, and they become supervillains instead of superheroes. And the parents go, wait, where did I go wrong? And they're scratching their heads going, man, it was their 8th birthday, or I don't know where the.
Well, I once read, I was actually curious about this because I was in film school, and I'm like, what makes a bad person bad? And I started reading books about the notorious people in history, trying to get an idea of, what got them there. And it's funny, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't that they didn't have values, it was that their values were out of order.
Right.
And where they were hardworking and they were a great scientist and blah, blah, blah. But that was more important than other human beings.
Right.
That was more important than God. That was more important than anything else. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. They valued order and perfection above human life. Above human life. Oh, wait, all of a sudden you have a super criminal on your hands. All of a sudden you have
eugenics and euthanasia.
Yeah. And so it wasn't actually that they didn't have values and didn't have good qualities. The problem is that their values were out of order.
Right.
And they basically, science was their God.
And that can be really scary.
Yeah. You don't want somebody, but they were very good at what they did.
Right.
So anyway, so that's...
So that's just it. Success does not mean you're a good person.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure we're very clear on that. Just because you're successful at something and have a superpower, and you've developed that superpower, it doesn't mean you're a superhero. You could be a supervillain, which, by the way, those are the best. Those movies where the supervillain doesn't realize that they're a supervillain, and they've developed their superpowers, and they're like, yeah, this is what you do. And they don't realize they're off track.
Yeah, those are the scariest villains.
Yes,
when they actually believe in what they're doing.
Yeah, as opposed to the comic book ones where they're bad because they want to be bad. No, nobody wants to be bad. It just happens if their values get out of order.
Their values are out of whack.
So, and Hannah, we have some very talented children, and if they get pointed in the wrong direction, they could do a lot of damage. Okay, so I guess that little I don't know, intro? Really? Well, no.
That's a funny intro. I think this has been our best intro. Wouldn't you agree?
So how do you direct those superpowers for good? How do you, I don't know, how do you direct it? How do you turn the tide in your favor? How do you, well, here it is. Because children are robots, all you have to do is press the right button combination and they'll do exactly what you say.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no. They're people. They have agency. They make their choices, So it's really up to them. All you can do as a mom and a dad and as family members is to encourage and
teach. You have to teach.
That's really all you can do. Well, we're going to talk about some of the tools you have at your disposal. But basically, if one of your kids or one of your family members is using their superpowers for bad, you almost wish they didn't have them. You're thinking, man, it'd be better if they didn't have these superpowers than using them for bad. And that's just it. There's no guarantee that your kids won't use their powers for bad. There's no guarantee. So, like we said before, what the easiest solution is just, not to use Moneypants at all. A better solution would be to stack the odds in your favor. And, there's that famous quote attributed to C.S. Lewis, basically to paraphrase, education without morals is just raising clever devils. If you don't give your kids a structure or these morals and these values in the right order, when you're giving them all these skills and they're developing these superpowers, you essentially are creating supervillains. Moneypants without morals creates supervillains. And it's scary to think about it, but this program is, I'm not tooting my own horn. It's just, this is how it's that effective. So when teaching and training your kids, you have to include a system of values so that they know when to use their superpowers, how to use their superpowers, and why they have these superpowers and what they're for. And that's why those morals are so important. Otherwise, they will use, well, here we go, superpower abuse. Here's some examples. Maybe your kid or one of your family members has the superpower of money and
They're
money management.
Money pants themselves.
Yeah. Well, they could easily just become, develop a pyramid scheme or become Enron. Or maybe they're a computer genius. Well, yeah, they could use that superpower to become a hacker and take advantage of others, like hold people ransom and steal all their information. Like you could be one of those people. Or maybe your family member has the superpower of a strong body and physically fit and athletic, and they could become, muscle for the mob. They could be an enforcer for the mob. You're like, maybe not the best use of your superpowers there, Bob. Or maybe they're really good with business and they become a drug dealer. Or maybe they have incredible musical talents and they end up making rap. Or worse, country. Just kidding. Or maybe they could, maybe they have really good social skills and they're, the social butterfly and they end up using it to bully and coerce and punish others by excluding them. A social media bully, using social media as their bully pulpit and to tear others down instead of building them up. I'm not going to name names, but I think everybody knows somebody like that who uses their social skills and their social status and their ability to communicate to hurt others rather than to build others up.
They're influencers, but
but influence. Yeah. But what type of influence are they exerting? Is it for good or for bad? Just because you're an influencer doesn't mean you're good. Okay. Or maybe your family member has the superpower of being persuasive and they have the leadership superpower, but instead they decide to use it to trick people into buying stuff they don't need and can't afford. Or maybe it's a lousy product, like a used car salesman. Nothing against those legit used car salesmen. I'm just talking the traditional used car salesman, Danny DeVito, his character in Matilda, where he knew he was selling somebody a pile of poo, but did it anyway because he would make money. Those are the people I'm talking about. Maybe your family member has the superpower of filmmaking, photography, design, all these amazing artistic abilities, and instead they use that to make nasty movies filled with, sex and graphic violence, like the dark underbelly of Hollywood. Or maybe your family member has the superpower of science. Maybe they just, those people that it all makes sense, the chemistry and the math and the physics and it just all makes sense to them and they end up becoming Walter White. where they
or developing chemical weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
Or,
where they use it for bad. And then a couple more examples. Maybe your family member has the amazing ability of speech, and kind of like with the Hitler example before, where
persuasion,
speech and debate and persuasive argument, and they become a lawyer. Okay.
We're having
too much fun. And then the last one, the last example of like the superpower abuse that I was thinking of was, maybe your family member has the ability, they're just in tune with medicine and human anatomy, and they use that to perform abortions or engage in euthanasia, where it's like, wow, that's
you could have used
it to make the world a better place. Instead, you're using it for bad. Anyway, so those are kind of like some of our examples of how superpowers could easily be abused. And we're not talking, and I guess that's part of the problem, Hannah. When we talk about superpowers, people think of like, oh, the Avengers, or you think about like all these kind of cartoonish characters, but we actually believe people have these innate, amazing abilities within themselves to make the world a better place. But if they misuse them, they really could make the world a worse place. And we're seeing that, I think, in our day and age, that's becoming more and more prevalent because of the amount of opportunities available to develop these superpowers that just weren't even available 50 years ago, where people can develop amazing superpowers that weren't even an option 50 years ago. And here Moneypants is, we're at the forefront. We're like, okay, and this is how you do it. And this is the most effective way to do it. And it's really, really effective. And oh yeah, by the way, if you don't do it right, you're going to raise a supervillain. So, which begs the question, I think, what values should you teach? We say you got to have values and they got to be in the right order, but what are those values? What are the key values that you should teach, that you have to teach your children and model for your children in order for them to not become supervillains, or at the very least, ensure to the highest degree possible that they don't become supervillains, to stack the odds in your favor? What are those main or key values that the kids should, or family members, I keep saying kids, but I mean all family members, because moms and dads aren't exempt from this. And I think that the main, in my mind, Hannah, there are three. There are three main values that every family member has to learn. Every parent has to teach their children when it comes to developing their superpowers. And here they are. Number one, they need to learn love of God. Number two, they need to be 100% honest.
Integrity.
And number three, kindness. So, and I think, okay, this is not a religious podcast, but we do mention God because we believe that there is a higher power, and you are accountable to that higher power. And that higher power is love. And all of a sudden, once you have that framework, it really changes how you treat others. If there is a higher power and you're accountable to that higher power, and that higher power is all about love, then you need to be treating other people the way that
becomes your priority.
Yeah, is to treat other people the way that higher power would want you to.
If that's your number one priority.
And that's why we put that as number one, a love of God.
Yeah.
The second one is honesty, and you said integrity, but they go hand in hand, where honesty,
Well, I would say the second one is actually kindness.
Well, I think that's a corollary to the first one. So yeah, okay, you could do that.
Yeah, the second most important one is kindness.
Treating and we're not talking about being nice. And I guess that's a different topic, but being nice is not the same as being kind. You can be kind without having to be nice. Nice is that wimpy, saying things that don't hurt people's feelings. Kind could be saying something that somebody needs to hear that they may not want to hear. That's still being kind because you have their best interest at heart, not your own. That's the difference. Kindness and niceness, they're not the same. We're talking about being kind, not nice.
You don't like that word nice.
Oh, I do not like the word nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the golden rule where you treat others how you would want to be treated, and you have love.
Only your true friends will tell you your face is dirty.
You have a love for others, a deep and abiding love for others.
And you want what's best for them.
Them as well as yourself.
It's not selfish.
Yeah.
So kindness is not selfish, whereas niceness a lot of times is.
Oh, that's a good point.
So, and then the third one is honesty. And this is, Hannah, you said integrity, but they go hand in hand. But I'm talking that...
Well, integrity is a little broader.
100% honest. And so if honesty is being 100% honest with others, then integrity would be being 100% honest with others and yourself. Where if you say you're going to do something, even if nobody hears it, you still do it. Even if you're not accountable to somebody else, only to yourself, you still do it. That's what integrity is, doing the right thing.
Even when nobody else is watching.
Even when no one is watching.
Or you think nobody else is watching.
And even when nobody else knows. That's integrity. So, but those are like the big three: love of God, kindness, and honesty. But I think other values to incorporate would include respect for human life, which comes from that is a natural extension of the love of God and of being kind. But also, how about humility? No, after all, nobody likes an arrogant superhero.
Respect for your body.
Yes.
Chastity. There's a lot of them.
So I guess the big question is, how do you teach these values? How do you teach morals? Well, isn't that the age-old question? Isn't that the age-old question? Okay, first of all, I think this should go without saying, but the easiest way to teach anything is by example. The problem is you can't teach what you don't know.
Yeah. Well, like if you're being dishonest and like
how do you expect your kids
taking advantage of other people, and your kids see you doing that, and you're like, hey, be honest.
They're like,
no, your actions spoke a little bit louder.
Yeah.
They're going to be learning the wrong thing from you if you're doing the wrong thing. They'll be observing the wrong thing.
Monkey see, monkey do. Like kids emulate their parents. That just normally. Again, it's not always the case. Sometimes good kids come out of bad families, and sometimes bad kids come out of good families. Everybody's different.
Yeah,
Everybody's
so you
unique.
Can't really judge somebody else's situation
by meeting their family.
By meeting,
You can't judge another person by meeting their family. It's not fair because you can't choose your family.
I had a friend who was like Matilda, she was just the nicest girl, just like socially aware, and I met her family, and wow, I just was like, it was like Matilda, where you're like, how did.
Nasty mother, nasty father, nasty siblings, and then there's you, and you're like, wait, what?
Where'd you come from?
Where do you fit in here? Oh, were you adopted?
Yeah, but you can see the opposite as well, opposite situation.
Well, I think everybody knows somebody who didn't turn out very well, who was from a good family, and vice versa. People who were from not so good families turned out okay. Everybody's different. But what we're saying is to stack the odds in your favor.
Yes.
You want to teach values and morals. And so first is example. The second, though, is you want to explicitly teach. And this is a new concept where it used to be the idea was, if you set a good example for your kids, they'll follow suit. And maybe that did work for a long time.
If society supported those values and they got enough of it. I mean, they used to teach values in school.
Yeah.
Like they used to pray in school. They used to teach basic values in school.
Yeah. And now it's kind of been run out.
Yeah.
Where even any sort of moral code has been chased out of public school. Now, private school is different, but public school, unfortunately.
But if you're just kind of saying, hey, I'll be a good person, it's not enough anymore.
Well, no, there's a recent study, Hannah, where they compared data from only, I think it's 30 years ago, where they asked the kids in school if cheating was okay. And the vast majority of the kids said no. I think it was like 90-something%. And now a large portion of them had admitted to actually cheating, but they still believed it was wrong. Then they redid it very recently. A group of kids, same age kids, and they said, hey, how many of you have cheated? And most of them said the same thing. About the same amount of kids admitted to cheating as the study from 30 years ago. So that hadn't really changed. Same kids were cheating. The difference was the number of kids who thought it was okay.
Oh, no.
It was like 70% of the kids thought it was okay to cheat. Whereas before it was like 5% thought it was okay to cheat 30 years ago. Today, 70% thought, oh yeah, it's fine. As long as you get what you need or what you want, or it ends up well in your behalf. And it's like, because, Hannah, we've gotten rid of teaching values. We are raising an entire generation of supervillains, and it's scary.
That was Trixie's experience in one of her classes. They asked, by show of hands, how many of you would cheat if you could get away with it? She was shocked because almost her entire class raised their hand. And she said the only people who didn't were her two friends that were sitting next to her, and
That's her influence.
and the teacher asked her, well, why wouldn't you cheat? And she said, because I'm a Christian. Because that's not okay.
Wrong?
It's wrong. God doesn't want me to cheat.
And it undermines my own value and integrity.
And my values. Even if I could, I'm not going to do that. And so the difference there was she believed in a higher power.
Being responsible to a higher power.
A higher power. It didn't matter if she could get away with something. So unfortunately that is going away. And what will happen to society if?
But that's what I'm saying. Like we're developing. We've already given a list of all those supervillains, and what could possibly happen if you raise supervillains. And yet here we are in our society raising an entire generation of supervillains. Or as C.S. Lewis, the quote attributed to C.S. Lewis, education without morals is just training clever devils. Yikes. I guess maybe Moneypants is the solution.
Well, it's like Trixie was frustrated last night because she wanted to sign up for a website, study.com. And I said, I don't want to give my credit card because you could do a free trial, but you had to give them your credit card. And I said to her, honey, I don't want to give my credit card because there was some other company that was well known and people required a credit card and people couldn't cancel it.
Yep.
Their customer service wouldn't answer the phone. They couldn't cancel it. And she said, yeah, but if I owned the company, study.com, I would want people to enter their credit card because I wouldn't want people to misuse my website and, just keep creating fake emails and getting it free indefinitely. And I'm like, wow, so we're kind of stuck in a situation where businesses have been dishonest and individuals have been dishonest, and that trust in society is breaking down. And so you can't offer things like that because the dishonesty has gone both ways.
All right, so how to teach values and morals, first by example. Second, you got to explicitly teach these things. But then let's break that down a little bit. Like, what do you mean by specifically teach it? Well, here you go. And here are some ideas. And the app actually has a whole bunch of these great ideas, but here are some. Daily scripture study, family prayer, go to church, service projects, good book series, watching what sort of media you partake and allow into your home, and then being picky about who teaches your children and who influences them, and then spending one-on-one time with your kids. These are all like really good ways to instill those values. And I think, let's just break those down a little bit, Hannah. We got daily scripture study. Traditionally, throughout history, that was the moral code by which societies survived. Especially here in America, we were a Bible-toting society. And I know some people in recent years have rebelled against it, but really, if you have a problem with the Bible, go try reading the book of John again and tell me what part of love one another and serve one another you really dislike. Because Jesus was a pretty darn good example of exactly the type of society I think everybody in the world would like, where he put others first, was looking out for others, stood up for those who were mistreated, stood up for the abused, the neglected.
If you don't like it, it's probably because you don't understand it, maybe the language at the time or something like that.
I have a bunch of different translations too if the King James Version doesn't sit well with you for whatever reason. But man, it's hard to misunderstand Jesus when he says, love one another. Serve one another. If someone smites you on one cheek, turn to them the other cheek. It's kind of hard to misinterpret that. And then reading about his life, it's really hard to misinterpret anything other than, oh, that's a very loving man who understood how to treat other people.
Well, it would say daily scripture study. And the reason it's daily is a human memory. They've done experiments in psychology. Human memory is terrible. So sometimes people will say, oh, I've read the Bible once, or I've read this once. Yeah, but the way human memory works or doesn't work, you actually have to be reading it regularly or you forget, and you forget very quickly.
Well, maybe not. Okay, there's a couple reasons. That is a big one, where there are so many pages in Scripture that have maybe the answer to the very question you're facing.
Yeah, where maybe you weren't dealing with that situation before.
Yeah, when you read it the first time.
Yeah.
But then the flip side is you're inundated with negativity and anti-scriptural, do good to other people messages.
Yeah.
And so it's that you need that daily dose of, I don't know what you would call it, the daily dose of energy to combat the negativity
and truth.
Truth.
Also
you know
truth.
what? That's what it is.
You need your soul filled with truth. I mean, because we've talked about this. You can pick up these, self-help books or motivational
and they're nice
books. They're nice, but they're not necessarily true.
Did you catch the negativity in my voice when I said that word?
Nice.
They're nice. It's true,
not
though.
Not necessarily true. So go to the truth. And fill your soul up with that. And,
that goes a long way. It really does, Hannah.
But so you want to nourish your spirit with the truth is basically the idea. And like nourishment, it has to be done daily. You feed yourself daily. And so one thing that helps us, which if maybe your family is struggling to have family scripture study, we found that the best way. It was easier when we had little kids because little kids
they can't escape.
They can't escape. Yes. Well,
they're a captive audience.
Like for little kids.
That sounds terrible.
If you have a very young family, the thing that worked well for me was to put my kids to bed, sit out in the hallway outside their bedroom doors, and read scriptures to them.
Yeah.
And they really liked that. And as long as their heads were down, I would read to them and I'd keep the door open. And so it actually helped them go to sleep and they enjoyed the scriptures. As our kids have gotten older, though, and we have kids in high school and all different ages, we've moved over we found that the best thing to do was have scripture study with the main meal of the day.
Yeah.
The meal that had the most people there.
Whether it was lunch or dinner. Never breakfast for some reason.
We have our meal, and right after the meal, we just have scripture study there at the table while everybody's there.
Sometimes I'll do it while people are still eating.
Yeah.
Because they're quiet and they can listen while they eat. It actually helps.
But yeah, they're calmed down, and we've had pleasant conversation, and now I found that if we do it that way, there's a lot more discussion.
That's
if
true.
we did it at mealtime, because people aren't like in a hurry. They're sitting down. They're relaxed at mealtime.
Right before job time.
Anyway, so it kind of helps us remember we're nourishing our bodies and our spirits at the same time, but we're not having to figure out two separate times to gather everyone together. So that's like an efficiency thing.
Which we're all about.
Which is what we're all about.
So that's number one.
Says the lady with 15 children.
Number one idea was scripture study, to teach those values. And traditional Christian values really go a long way to alleviating a lot of these problems, whether it's dishonesty or fighting or treating others poorly or what have you. And the one that goes hand in hand with that, number two, would be family prayer, where there's something, I don't want to use the word magical, but it kind of feels that way. There's something unifying about everybody getting together. And in our family, we all hold hands and we all form a circle and we pray for one another out loud. And for some reason, hearing one of my younger children pray for one of their older siblings to do well on their test or on the game or whatever, man, that melts my heart. As a dad, that melts my heart. But also, I noticed for the older sibling, they're like, oh, that was really cool. And it engenders that it engenders that sense of unity. Going back to the whole team analogy, which we love, if the family's a team and mom and dad are coaches, what doesn't it build that sense of unity if everybody's pulling for each other and wishing the best for each other and hoping the best for each other and being
asking God for the best
and asking us a higher power for help with that. I mean, that just, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And then of course the number 3 one was church, where again, traditionally that's where people got their values. That's where they learned what values were. And if maybe they weren't good at reading the scriptures, maybe they didn't understand the scriptures, but they had the preacher or the pastor expounding and explaining it. They're like, okay, I got it.
That's a good starting place.
I would hope and pray that pastors would be in tune and they would read the scriptures and actually know what they're supposed to be teaching. Nothing irritates me more. I've gone to churches where the pastors did not teach the scriptures. And I was like, what are you doing?
You've got the Bible.
You have one job, buddy. You have one job, and you're not doing it. Man,
I've heard.
You're gonna have to answer to that higher power.
Yeah, I've heard. One lady once, a friend of ours once referred to those types of preachers as ear ticklers.
Oh, I like that, ear ticklers.
Ear ticklers. They weren't actually teaching they were just trying to be popular.
Yeah.
And
that's not their job.
That's not their job.
You want to be popular? Get on Facebook.
Yeah.
Get an Instagram account. Be an underwear model. I don't know. Okay. So next up, you want to do service projects. This, again, going back to the whole team idea. I've noticed a lot of times these pro teams will go and do service in the communities where they play. The Baltimore Ravens or the Chicago White Sox, or these teams will actually go into the community and do home repairs, or go do reading books with the kids, or whatever it may be. And they call it giving back, but it's not really giving back per se. It's just contributing to the wellness of society.
Yeah, but back to like the core values of being kind. And if you're regularly doing that, you just become more aware
Grounded.
of others. And also you realize this is what I want to do. Like that this is where my talents should be going.
Right.
And is to use them in ways to bless other people. And one time it was really cool. I had a daughter who was had taken some singing classes and music classes, and she organized a show at the nursing home for the elderly people there.
Who couldn't get out.
Mm-hmm. And
let me rephrase that. Who couldn't get out on their own and do things and go to shows and stuff because they're basically locked in.
Yeah, so she used her musical talent, and she also had a lot of friends and a good influence, and was able to pull a lot of her friends to come with her. And it wasn't that she was like this amazing singer. She was kind of a beginning level singing. She had a lovely voice, but I could see on the faces of the people it meant so much to them. And so I was like, good. This is what you use your talents for. This meant a lot to them. It was a good opportunity for you to see what your talents were for.
Perfect.
And anyway.
Another, number 5, an idea was the Help Me Be Good book series by Joy Barry. And Hannah, I've read a lot of those, and they're just these little, 20-page little books for kids with cute drawings and funny drawings. But they explain concepts to kids, what it means to tattle, what it means to be honest, what it means to overdo it, what it means to break things, what it means to be a friend. And I'm like, these are really good.
They're probably the best written. I'm hopefully there are other books out there, but out of all the ones that I've found where for supporting teaching kids, young kids values.
They're simple. Just 5 minutes. They explain concepts.
And the kids really like the books.
Because they're funny.
Yeah, they're funny and
a little clever, but
I've learned from
pretty
reading
straightforward.
them. I've learned from reading them like how to explain things to my kids.
Oh, that was another thing. Yeah, like tattling.
It actually helped me define it and explain it to them and the underlying concepts and things like that. Anyways, I highly recommend it. It's called Help Me Be Good. And the author is Joy Barry. Well,
and along those lines, the next book series we would recommend would be the American Girl books. And I've been very impressed with how classy and tasteful those books are. And those are kind of geared more towards tweens and teens, whereas the Help Me Be Good books are kind of more for younger kids.
Well, I think tweens would be more for the American Girl. Like probably girls 8 to 13.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah.
And those are surprisingly good. I was very impressed with those. And then, of course, going back to the whole church thing, churches have teaching magazines and videos. And some of our favorites, actually, we love the Jehovah's Witnesses. They have a thing on YouTube. Is it called Whiteboard? Is that what it's called? Whiteboard?
Yeah. So on their site, I have a friend who's a Jehovah's Witness she came over to my house and we became friends. Anyway, so she was giving me the resources. She saw I had a big family. So she was showing me the resources her church had. Mm-hmm. And on their website, under the youth area, they have a thing called Whiteboard videos.
Something like that.
Whiteboard. And they were great. very useful. So we watched them and then discussed them with our kids.
They are great discussion starters.
Yeah, and and then they had
But the thing I like even more though is they gave us these books, and if you have the Jehovah's Witnesses come by, this is what you want to ask them for. It's called Questions Young People Ask, and we have volumes 1 and 2. Those are fantastic.
They're very well written.
They're incredibly well written, and they teach the values, and they're things like, what if I don't like my stepmom? Or should I be having premarital relations with my boyfriend? Or is it okay to cheat? Like all of these questions that they pose in the book, and then they give like a scriptural example of what God says about it. But then they give practical advice about how to implement it. And it's very well written. I was like, dang, these are good.
Yeah, they're really good. So don't, you're like, it's the Jehovah's Witness at my door.
Yeah,
no, next time, open the door, say, okay, so I have a favor to ask of you. Could you get me your books? There's 2 of them. Questions Young People Ask. Could I have a copy? Don't waste the opportunity when they come knocking, okay? All right?
And the same thing goes with the church.
It doesn't matter what religion you are. Just go ahead and ask them.
The same thing goes with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have the For the Strength of Youth pamphlet, which is also really good.
Yeah, it's all about values. It's about it covers a whole range of things.
Even now, the interesting thing that one is it actually covers things from, premarital relations and honesty and dancing and media and dress and appearance, but also abuse. And I was like, there's some good stuff in here that would be very helpful to
addictions.
And that's geared more towards older kids. So we have some stuff geared towards younger kids, like the Help Me Be Good series. We've got the kind of the mid-range kids with the American Girl. And then we've got maybe older kids with the Jehovah's Witnesses Questions Young People Ask, and also the Church of Jesus Christ has the For the Strength of Youth pamphlet. I think those are really good resources to teach those basic values. And I guess we'll talk about when to do it in a second.
Like on Sundays, you can pull out a section from any one of those resources or one of the videos or something. Read it, watch it, and then talk about it with your kids.
Well, that's just it. So that's the next suggestion, was to read books to your children and then discuss the values. And that would be
and that's any book.
Yeah, any book.
No. I think the church pamphlet things.
Those are great discussion starters.
Those are great for I think Sundays.
Or right after dinner.
That
could be your
family
study.
But if you're doing scripture study during the week, maybe on Sundays, do a little extra family discussion. Hey, we're going to talk about
family
dating
devotional or something.
And proper dating relationships.
But another tool you have at your disposal is pretty much any book you read. You guys could read as a family and then discuss the values. I remember we did that when my oldest started reading, and she wanted to read these the books geared towards teens, and I'm like, well, I have to read it, because we don't allow media in the home that we're not familiar with. And I ended up reading, and I'm not going to say what it was, but I ended up reading this teen fantasy series, and it had some stuff in there that was pretty questionable. But it gave the opportunity for me to talk to my daughter about those things, because we read it basically at the same time. And I was able to talk to her about, what do you think about what this character did? And was that okay? And yes or no? And why or why not? And it really kind of opened my daughter's mind to, and I'm not going to say critical analysis, because that's not what we were doing, but to actually think about.
Was that okay?
Yeah, to think about what you're reading and what it means and how it influences you and how it influences your thought process.
Well, that's like the Little Mermaid. You're like, okay, so what happened here?
That if you disobey your parents and do whatever you want and get involved intimately with a member of the opposite sex, it'll all work out. That's the message. If you disobey your parents, it'll all work out in your favor. Pretty sure that's not the message we want to teach our children. But no. I digress.
Okay.
But if we watch that, we never watch that as a family, because I don't like that movie. But if we did, that would be my commentary.
Yeah.
Which leads into the next idea. If you're going to read books with your children, or to your children for that matter, watch shows together and then discuss afterwards. Those are great teaching moments. Hannah, you were talking about you guys. Anytime you read or take in media, it can be a teaching moment and should be a teaching moment.
Yeah.
I don't think that you should be overtly involved with anything that is graphic nudity, violence,
Well,
sex. You can bleep those. If you want to watch some of these shows, there's that great service called VidAngel. But if you're going to watch a show, you should watch it as a family and discuss it, because it can be a teaching moment. So you would watch that show, Say Yes to the Dress.
Yeah. So I'd watch Say Yes to the Dress, which is a good show. It's a good show. It's about girls going into a high-end wedding dress shop and trying to pick out their dress for their wedding day. It's kind of a simple show. I had a bunch of little girls young teen girls, and we enjoyed watching it together. But, different clients would come in, and sometimes, they'd be obnoxious.
Bridezilla.
There would be issues. And I liked watching it with my kids and then being, pointing these things out, saying, oh, what happened there? And what did you think about that? And what she said, what she did.
Yeah,
what was going on
how
there.
How she was treating other people.
And it really, it got my daughters thinking, that was terrible. And how could she do that to her parents or, that sort of thing. Or we also liked that show, What Not to Wear. It was a fantastic show. And we were able to talk about, hey, well, how did she look before, and was she coming across, and was she trying to look that way, and why, and
what did that communicate, and what did
was
it mean?
She communicating?
And it gets the little kids' brains churning and going, wait a minute, wearing that means that, and if I look like this, people will think that, and because it does matter.
I'm not showing respect to myself, or I don't think very much of myself if I dress this way. And anyway, it was great. And we also watched Breaking Bad with our older kids. We watched it on VidAngel, and how VidAngel works is you can put the settings so you can take out any language, any scenes that may have violence. You can decide what you want to take out.
Yeah, you can rate it yourself from G up to R, whatever the show. I just want to bleep all the language, but the violence doesn't bother me. Or the language, these words don't bother me, but these ones do.
They'll even let you bleep out immodesty, like if somebody's dress is too low cut, you know. So it's a really great. It's a great
service.
way, because you don't need bad language and things like that.
Well, okay,
and running around in your.
That's just it, Hannah. We talk about reading to your kids and watching and partaking of media with your kids. Well, what you teach your kids is just as important as what you don't teach them. Mm-hmm. So, because kids model what they see. Monkey see, monkey do. And so you've got to be picky about what modeling your kids witness and experience. If they witness violence and language and nudity and all these things on TV, they're going to think that's normal and right.
With no consequences.
But if mom and dad are there and you're discussing these things as a family, you can see these things. And again, we suggest kind of bleeping all the explicit stuff, but still, we watched Breaking Bad as a family.
Edited.
The edited version.
But only with the older kids, because we didn't feel like the younger ones would understand it. They'd get the wrong message.
But we had great discussions afterwards of, what do you think about that
and
why?
The consequences.
So good. And I feel like our kids really got a better view of the influence of media, but also the choices that we make and how they affect. And of course, that show does show how
it's a tragedy. The whole show's a tragedy. It's where the hero.
Well, don't spoil it for people who haven't seen it. But it does. The show is a tragedy, but it shows the consequences of actions in an accurate way.
In an amazingly accurate way.
It was really well done, and it opened up a lot of discussions for our family, and I liked that. On the flip side, there was that movie we watched years ago called The Count of Monte Cristo, and I was really disappointed because it was all about revenge. And the theme was, if this guy goes for revenge, the girl warned him, hey, if you go for revenge and if you see this through, I can't be with you. I can't be with somebody who's filled with hatred and revenge and all this. And the guy ended up saying whatever and got his revenge anyway and killed the bad guy or whatever. And he got the girl anyway. And it's like, wait a minute. What message is that teaching?
Yeah,
You can be filled with hatred and anger and take revenge and take the law into your own hands and, it'll all work out. Not really the lesson.
So it wasn't a true
Not
story.
the values and the morals I want to teach my kids.
Yeah, there were no consequences for the bad choice of letting revenge
Okay. And then
Take over.
another method, another specific way to teach values and morals is to be picky about friends, teachers, and coaches. And we've said this, I think we've said this before. You can't be too careful who teaches your children. You can't. You can't be too picky about who teaches your children because they have a lot of influence. Sometimes they're with your children more than you are. And so it is imperative and critical that the people who are teaching your children have the same values and morals, or at least support the values and morals that you are trying to teach your children. And then, of course, the last of our many suggestions on teaching morals and values to children is to have one-on-one time with the kids. That goes a long way. A lot of times, concerns, ideas, thoughts will come up during the discussions or during the walk or during that one-on-one time. Dad, why did blah, blah, blah happen? Then you can teach. It's a teaching moment, and it's great.
Or they'll tell about problems that they're dealing with.
Exactly.
And if you're there and you're listening and they know that you care, sometimes they'll ask you, what should I do?
And it's great. Boy,
And
there's
then
nothing better, Hannah. Nothing
all
better
of
when
a
a kid
sudden-
is willing to listen. Because you, as a parent, you have that knowledge, but you have that love and concern for the child, and you will not lead them astray, hopefully.
You know, I was thinking about one-on-one time this past week, and I just gave birth to twins, and so I'm not really up and about that much right now. So I started like inviting my little kids to, just one of them, to come help me make dinner. And it's funny because it's been one-on-one time, and they started begging, is it my turn to help you make dinner? Because they loved that attention. I thought, I was like, yeah, this one-on-one time, like on Sunday, I was cutting one of the kids' hair, and I asked Trixie to come cut the other kid's hair. And we had the best time visiting together and bonding and talking while we were both busy cutting little kids' hair together. And
invite your children to your already planned activities, but just make it a one-on-one time. Running errands. I do that when I got to go to the store to return this. Okay, it's your day. Come with me. And maybe I'll get them a treat when we're in line, but maybe not. It's just that one-on-one time.
Yeah. Anyway, so don't feel like, oh, that's a big deal. I've got to,
nope.
Make it work with what you're doing and what you're able to do.
I'm going to go work in the yard. Come with me.
I have to make dinner in the kitchen.
I'm going to go change the oil in the car.
Come with me. And it became a very pleasant, relaxing
and
time.
they learned something too.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Okay. So, here's the nice thing. This is the Moneypants program. The Moneypants app has these goals and these things that you can schedule already as part of your app. You have 10 daily habits
Yeah. And
that allow you to incorporate these values into your family and into your life.
Yeah. So we had a previous podcast where we talked about how at least one of your goals should be a physical goal. And we talked all about why that is, why you should have a bedtime in there, why you should have exercise in there, why it was important that would be included within your habits and your goals that you're setting. Likewise, you should always be including things to help yourself spiritually and to teach your children values.
Yes.
And that's why, because they are going to be amazing. If you're using Moneypants, they're going to have amazing skills, amazing abilities, but you want to point it in the right direction.
You want to direct it.
You want to direct it that way.
Direct those amazing abilities.
It's not a guarantee, but it will definitely increase the odds that things continue to go in the right direction.
Well, and that's just the thing, though, is when you set up these Moneypants goals, it helps you focus that energy, those superpowers in the right direction. But it also, when you're setting the goals, ideally, it should be that moment of clarity and introspection of, this is what I really want. So then when you get busy or you're tired or whatever, you're not changing your goals because it's already written out. This is what I really want to accomplish. And these are the superpowers I'm trying to develop. And so it helps you so you don't lose sight of where you're really trying to go. And it does. It helps you. It helps direct your superpower development. And so, things like attending church, date night with the spouse, prayer and scripture study, one-on-one time with the kids, doing a good deed, as the Boy Scouts say, a good turn daily.
Reading books to your kids.
Having family devotional. And these are all goals that you can set with the app that will help you to get that time and that focus to teach your children those morals and values. Not just your children, the whole family. Every member of the family should be encouraging each other to develop those morals and those values that are conducive to a superhero and not a supervillain. Whew. Anyway, I think that's it. Those are kind of all of our thoughts on making sure that you don't train supervillains. And if you like what you hear in this podcast, please tell your friends. They may want to listen too. We may share something that they're looking for. We may have an answer to one of their questions. And if you have a suggestion for a future podcast, go to our website under support and click Contact Us. Send us an email and we'll get right on it. And that's it for today. Enjoy some of Falcon Jasper's indubitably interesting intonations. We'll see you next time.